Hi guys, welcome to my second video. I realise it's been about a week since I recorded the first one, but I just haven't had time to sit down and record anything, and I wanted to kind of give it a bit of thought before I kind of did another video. I wanted to make sure that what I was talking about was something I was interested in and something that I also had a lot of thoughts that I wanted to kind of share. I want these videos to be kind of like podcast-ish and just me rambling about my thoughts. So yeah, I hope you enjoy the video. And if you are new, please subscribe if you fancy, and if you want to like the video or chat to me in the comments, I would love to talk to you. But yeah, let's get into it. So today we're going to talk about a game, a video game, which I've been playing since, I've been playing it for about, I would say about 2 years plus now, maybe 2 years about. The game came out in 2020, I believe, over lockdown, and the game is called Genshin Impact. It's a gacha game. It's kind of like an anime game, but it's also like open world and kind of similar to Breath of the Wild in some ways, but also very different. I think people like to say that it's like the same as Breath of the Wild, but it has similarities but also has a lot of differences. So yeah, I didn't start playing it from the beginning when it came out. I didn't find out about it till about a year after it came out, and by that time people have been playing it for a while and 2 of the regions had come out, so I came to it after Leeway, which is the second region, had come out. Since then I've obviously been playing for 2 years. I've kind of got used to how the game works. I know a lot about the game and its mechanics. At the beginning I was kind of like so confused about a lot of it, and I used to get really lost, and I found it all very overwhelming and difficult to understand. But my friend who played the game a lot kind of helped me to understand it, and they kind of gave me tips and helps on it, and I came to a point now where I know about the game, I know how it works, and I know the good and the bad about this game, and I think I wanted to talk about just this game in general and my thoughts on it. It's not going to be any kind of hot takes. A lot of people have said these things, but I wanted to put it all into a video and just talk about it. So I want to talk about first just like some overall points about the game, like in general. It is a gacha game, so by nature it is one of those games that kind of draws you in, and some people spend money on it, some people don't. I'm one of these people who I spend a little bit on it, but I don't really spend very much. I probably spend the smallest amount that you can spend on it. But a lot of people sink a lot of money into this game, and you can kind of see why, because of how they hook you with it, and I'm going to talk about that now. So first I want to talk about like how addictive it is as a game, and this is something that I didn't kind of experience until I've been playing the game for like maybe a year, and I started to understand it a bit more, and I started finding myself, especially because I was hanging around with people that also played the game, I started finding that I would feel kind of FOMO if I wasn't playing the game, if I wasn't keeping up with events, or if I wasn't on as high an exploration as other people, if I missed anything. And what the game does, which I'll talk about later on, is they often like release bits of content randomly that if you don't play at that time, you basically miss it. So on that point, it's hard not to feel like you're missing out on stuff. But yeah, it is a very addictive game. I love the game. I love a lot about the game, but I would say that it's hard not to fall into a pattern of like thinking about the game all the time. I definitely find myself kind of having it on my mind all the time, and like if I'm not really doing much, I'm like, maybe like if I wake up in the morning, I'm like, oh, I need to play Genshin, or I'm gonna do this today or this today, and it's kind of like thinking about, is that like a healthy relationship to have with the game, and why exactly does it provoke those kind of feelings in people? I've thought about this a lot, and I would say it has a lot to do with the fact that there's things you need to do all the time, and the amount of content is a lot, and part of the oddity of it is that there is not really an end game, and this is something I'm going to talk about later as a criticism, but it makes it all the more odd that you continue playing and you have that addictive tendency, because it's like, what are you actually building these characters for? What are you actually getting this exploration for? What does it actually do for you, really? And I think personally that it's kind of like a competitiveness, especially if you know other people who play the game. It's hard not to kind of get into a pattern of like, oh, they've done this, so I need to do this, and oh, they've explored like all the regions to 100%, I need to do that, or they have more than me, they've hoarded more resources than me, I need to do that. And it's like that kind of dialogue that, because it's such a hoardy game, because it's such a grindy game, it's all about what you have, and I think that's what makes it all the more kind of competitive and addictive. But the difficulty is that these negative or these things that draw you in mean that it does have real life consequences. If you're spending like days completing a quest, or hours trying to get 100% on a region, that's time that you've lost in the real world. That's time that you could be doing something else, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. I think everything needs to be in moderation, and if you're not doing much and it's what you choose to do with your time, then fine. But for me, I find like I feel guilty if I spend a long time on the game, and I'm like, what could I have been doing in that time that I've kind of pushed aside because I was playing this game? And when you see that you've played like 400 plus hours into the game, which I have, you think, wow, that's a lot of time. Like, that's a lot of time that you could have like spent on other things. So it's kind of a back and forth, really. So I want to talk about some good things about the game, what I find like I like about the game. I really like the exploration. I like finding different things to explore, how the different regions have different personalities and different like references to different countries. I also like that it kind of becomes part of my routine. Like, it gives me something to do in the day. It's like, okay, I need to do my kind of Genshin routine, and it doesn't mean I necessarily have to go on it for hours. Like, I might spend like an hour just using the resin, and it just becomes part of my day-to-day stuff. And I like a game where it is like a routine. So yeah, I like that part. I also really love the story, and I have found a lot of the story really engaging and interesting, and I get quite invested into the lore of the game, and I feel like, I don't know, other people relate to this, but I love like watching videos on like theories and lore, and like connections people make between events and stuff. I love that kind of stuff. So yeah, I really like those things about the game. In terms of like more negative things, I would say these are quite complex, and I think most of all it's a shame that Hoyoverse doesn't invest in the game, and I feel like a lot of the times they've actively gone against the fans' wishes and actively not done things that could make the game better, which to me, I just think I don't understand it. I feel like it's really odd how they have just kind of rejected fan suggestions. But things like the end game, like a lot of people who've been playing the game from the beginning, they've been building characters from the beginning. They've been grinding artifacts. They've been saving up talent books and all these kind of things. They've been building units and teams and different elemental combinations. And I guess we all thought that as the game progressed, that something would kind of come out. There'd be like content that would be repeating, that would be like content that is always accessible, that people can use their characters on and can challenge themselves. And I think the only thing that we've had in that regard has been Spiral Abyss. And if you play the game, you know that Spiral Abyss, there's like different dungeons where you fight different enemies, and there's the kind of main one, which is 1 to 10, and then there's the floors that are beyond that, which are the ones that like you can repeat. So the 10 plus are the only replayable content that is kind of difficult in the game, I would say. Like the bosses and the world bosses and all those things, I feel like have become very repetitive and more so just annoying to fight than anything else. It's kind of like, oh, this one you need to like wait for it to not be flying around half the time, or oh, you need to get out of the way while they're like stomping on the ground. I just feel like they could be a lot more creative with the fight, and yeah, it could be a lot more based on like, this fight, you have this like thing that's going to affect your character, and you need to bring in these characters, or maybe you need to eat this food, or like, I don't know, I just feel like they could be a lot more creative about it, and it's just becoming very repetitive, which is another point that I was going to make about the game becoming more repetitive and there being like a lack of variety in the game. Like, if you look at the exploration in Mondstadt, obviously it wasn't the most like creative, and there were things that could be improved, obviously, but it's like, since the game's progressed, it's kind of the same everywhere. And yes, it's a free to play game. Like, I don't expect them to go into loads of detail about these things, but at the same time, if you want to keep people engaged in your game, at a certain point they're going to get bored of seeing the same things over and over again, and I think if they want to retain player base, that's something they really need to think about. Another thing that I was going to talk about is the RNG element of the game, and this is what I find probably the most annoying about the game, is artifacts. So artifacts are these things that you equip to your character to give them different buffs, I guess, different skills. So like, there's like attack, crit damage, crit rate, all these things. But what is kind of mind-boggling is the fact that the stats that you want are really low. There's a really low chance of you actually getting those stats, and you can be grinding a domain for these artifacts. You could grind that domain for months and months and months and months and months and not get the artifacts you want, which just gets really tiring and makes the game become so frustrating, I feel like, because you want to make your characters good, and let's say you need to build 5 characters and you need to get 5 artifacts for each of those characters, and each artifact could take you about 3 months or 3 to 5 months to get good artifacts from. That's a lot of time just to build those characters. It's a lot of time. And even when you've built those characters, what are they being used for? So like, I think at the moment, the Hoyoverse is kind of coming under scrutiny because they have said stuff like, oh, we don't want endgame because it gives our player base anxiety. Which I find so funny, because the thing that gives me anxiety is not that at all. The thing that gives me anxiety is not being able to get good artifacts and having to grind the hell out of the same domain a million times. That gives me anxiety. Another thing that gives me anxiety is the fact that the new Abyss floors don't work for a lot of the characters that I've actually built, and they would work for newer characters, so I'd have to grind for those. I don't think they understand that what gives players anxiety is the grinding, or at least me. I'm not speaking for everyone here. What gives me anxiety is grinding and having to grind so hard for something that shouldn't be so difficult to do. Yeah, so it's like, or constantly being like advertised these new characters. Obviously that's part of the game, but like, what are these characters for? What is their purpose? What are we building characters for? I feel like that is what is wrong with the game at the moment, is it feels like it doesn't really have a purpose. And the more you play it, the more it's becoming just like, I'm logging in, I'm doing my commissions if I can be bothered, because the commissions are so boring. So a lot often I don't even bother with my commissions, because I just find them tedious. So you're doing that, you're doing your quests, which only come out, like big Archon quests are like the main quests, and they will take you a while to do, but they only come out when a new region comes out, which is about once a year. So once you've done your Archon quests, the only other thing you've got to do is story quests. Again, they come out not so super often, unless you let them build up, then they could get overwhelming. But yeah, so you're doing that. Then you're grinding for your characters, but what are you grinding your characters for? So you kind of think, what's the point? Yeah, it's very weird. And I know that a lot of people have talked about how not only have Hoyoverse actively ignored us, but on improving Genshin, but what they've actually done is use people's feedback for Genshin and put that into a new game that they've just come out with, which is Honkai Star Rail. Well, I don't know if it's just come out. I don't know when it came out. I haven't been keeping up with that game. So instead of improving the game they already had, which made them loads of money, they decided to create a new game and put everything into that people wanted for the original game. But yeah, I find that odd and strange, but I guess it's kind of telling for what their motives are. But yeah, that was my chat about Genshin Impact. As I said, I still play it today. I still enjoy the game. I just feel that it could be improved so much more, and they are unwilling to improve it because they think that it serves a purpose, it gives them money, and they don't actually need to improve it. But I think that the problems with the game are overtaking other things, because it's becoming harder and harder for beginners to start playing the game, and it's becoming harder and harder for them to keep people who've been playing the game for a long time. So I think there will be a point where it just becomes to the middle group, and maybe even they will fall off eventually as they reach the end of the game. So yeah, those were my thoughts, and just a bit of a rant. Sometimes I just like to rant about stuff. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you know nothing about Genshin Impact, then go watch a video on it if you want to, or like a trailer of the game. And if this has introduced you to the game, then cool, and if this has made you not want to play the game, then fair enough. But yeah, thank you for watching, and I will see you all soon. Bye.